Hey, so what's up, guys? So you know what's been happening? Everything is going down and everyone is worried. You're thinking, damn, what's happening in the stock market? What's happening? Everything is just going way wire. You guys, if you haven't been living under a rock, you definitely know what I'm talking about. The stock market has been crazy lately. And before we get into the stock market details, let's just go into like what is happening, what's making these stock markets go so crazy. And obviously, you know what's making the stock markets go crazy is the tariffs that Trump has been just throwing, all over the place, like China, Canada, Mexico, Vietnam, where it's crazy. So Trump has been throwing all these tariffs all around and it's messing up everything else, including you sitting at home somewhere in Kenya, somewhere in Africa, in your normal, simple life house. You're just enjoying your life, but then Trump comes and then he's now messing up everything that is affecting you. And you might not know it, right? So you might not know why this is affecting you, but it is affecting you in many ways than one, in so many ways. So the reason for doing this video, obviously, is because if you're investing, you need to be prepared. If you in the stock market, if you invest in stocks in any way, you need to be ready for this. But again, on a wider scale, even if you're not investing, if you're in business, if you just, a normal person, you don't invest really, but these things affect you somehow, and you need to be aware of what's happening. So background of what's happening. So tariffs. We've been hearing this word all over the place since Trump joined. So what are tariffs and how do they impact us? How do they impact you? How do they really affect the economy? How do they drive all this talk mayhem that's happening? So tariffs are basically taxes, or what we call excess duties, that are imposed on goods that are imported into a country, goods or services in this case. So if someone is importing stuff into a country, you have the right to impose certain taxes on them or impose some duty that has to be paid. In Kenya, for instance, if you're importing cars, you get to pay a lot of taxes, and we know that, right? We know how that affects us when you're importing cars or anything else, because the taxes when you're importing stuff is quite high. We're not talking about Kenya today, we're talking about the US. So the US is one of the biggest trade partners in the world to many different countries. It produces a lot, obviously, and it also imports a lot because the consumerism is high and it has the population, it has the money, it has the surplus to actually consume. So obviously for you to be that huge in consumption, it means that you have a population that is actually rich enough. And when I say rich is relative, it means they're in a position to actually buy these goods and services. That's why some of these countries will rather have a good relationship with the US, knowing very well that yes, we need to import or export our goods into the US. And most of the time when these things are charged, they're charged based on the value of whatever it is you bring into the country. So like we've seen recently, Trump has been imposing all these tariffs as part of his policy when he came into office. And he was very clear that when he comes into office, he's going to make sure that he levels the playing ground. And as he calls it, the US has been ripped and taken advantage of by other countries, and therefore he feels like it's time for them to be ripped. Actually, he did use that word. He's going to rip them off as well. Is their time to be ripped off because they have been ripping off the US. Now, the details of that, I do not know, and the truth about that, we all know. But if you go into fact checking, you realize that the tariffs are not as high as Trump made them look. But of course, there's the politics bit of it as well. There's the popularism bit of it as well. So, he needs to say certain things for his supporters to hear them. But the truth is quite different, right? Anyways, that's not the issue. The fact is he's now imposed these tariffs, and this is now affecting so many people without even knowing. Now, by the time I'm doing this video, he has just imposed up to 145% tax. Now, imagine if you are bringing a good that was like, let's say $10 or $100, you add that tax of like 145%, you can imagine how expensive that product could be. So recently, he did put a pause on some of these tariffs that he imposed on most of the countries, and that's just for 90 days. But one major country that is also one of the biggest trading partners for the US is China, and it just did not put any pause on China. It just imposed 145% tariffs on Chinese goods that are entering the US. And then, of course, as you know, China has decided, you know what, we're not going to back down. We don't care what you do. We're also going to impose more tariffs on your goods coming into our country. And that now they've just imposed 125% that is supposed to take effect tomorrow on Saturday. Some of the biggest trading partners for the US are Mexico, we have Canada, we have China, we have Vietnam, we have South Korea, we have Taiwan. We have some of these countries that are like big trading partners with the US. And of course, this will impact them in many, many, many ways. So like I said, there are different tariffs imposed on different countries. A lot of things are happening, right? Some people are saying that there's insider trading, whereby Trump said, hey, you can buy stocks now, and then later he goes and posts these tariffs, and then stocks go up, and maybe his billionaire friends are making money. There are lots of these things that happen. And I always say when you're investing, You need to be ready for all these things to happen. That's just part of the investing landscape, because some people will have more information than we do. So there are reasons why countries do impose these tariffs. Someone would be saying, why do we need to impose all these tariffs? We could just have like an open playing field whereby it's a fair game. You sell, I buy. It's, a willing seller, willing buyer situation. And then the balance of trade will just end up happening the way it happens, right? But that's not how it happens. The world has to be controlled. There are people in power. There are policies that has to be put into place. So for tariffs, some of the purposes that tariffs do serve is protectionism, which is what Trump is doing, trying to protect your own country from exploitation, thinking that, other people are exploiting your country by bringing in all the goods. And therefore, it means that whatever it is produced locally is not being purchased. And that means the local industries are dying, employment is dying, a lot of things are happening because everything that you're consuming is imported. That's a problem for a country, right? So there could be protectionism laws around it. That's one reason why someone would have tariffs. The second thing could be generation of revenue. They want to make money because from tariffs you're making money directly, right? So obviously the country want to make more money, they put more tariffs, and therefore when you import something or people are importing things into your country, then they pay a lot of money, and that goes to the government, obviously. Then there's just trade policy. Sometimes these are just around trade policies. You want to make sure that you control trade policy, you have a fair playing ground, you make sure that each country is importing what you actually want and how you want it, and they're following the policies that are required by the country. It's just about formulation of policies, and so tariffs could be a way in which a country formulates its policy, and it could have different reasons and factors that it considers before it formulates those policies. The impacts of tariffs, it could be what you're seeing right now, and one of them is just that consumers could end up buying things way more expensively. So let's say the US is now imposing all these tariffs, and what happens is that they will be forced to buy locally produced goods, which could be high in price, right? Because then the demand goes high, what happens? Prices goes high for the locally produced goods. So it could mean higher prices. But again, not just for locally produced goods. If you're importing things from a different country and they end up still bringing in those goods because the trade has to continue, and you impose high taxes, where does that go to? Where do the companies recover their money from? They recover it from the consumers. So yes, China could still end up bringing stuff into the US, but the consumer in the US who has been buying these things will end up paying for that tariff, right? So these things could go high, and you never know how far it goes. So at the end of the day, who suffers? The consumer. And that's where you come in. Wherever it is you're sitting, know that these things are affecting you. So if there's a tariff war between your country and another country, it's affecting you. And sometimes it's not directly into your country, but it affects the production levels, it affects the production prices, manufacturing prices in that host country. And that means if that country is also exporting things to your country, they might try to ensure that they recover the deficit that they have in that country that has imposed tariffs on them. That could also spill over to other countries as well, as the companies try to recover the losses from tariffs. Then you could also have reduced imports. No one wants to bring goods into your country. It makes sense. It's too expensive to produce and bring into your country because then you're imposing too much tariffs. And in that case, low imports, and low imports could mean a lot of things in your country. If you cannot bring in things that you need to use and utilize for different things within the country, then it affects you in many ways. Then, of course, there's the war, right? Countries will retaliate, or they will just say, hey, you know what, you're doing this to us, I'm going to do this to you. The same way China has just done. They have now imposed 125% taxes on imports from the US. Same thing. And right now, I hear the US is trying to speak to them because there's also what we call a trade deficit. There could be one of these countries is obviously importing more than the other. And as we know, US is importing way more than China is importing from the US. So in that case, who is going to suffer? The US consumers are going to suffer, and the US is also going to suffer because it needs these goods that it's been importing. These are like big industries that require these imports, and therefore, in this case, they will end up paying all this money. So who is suffering? The people are suffering. So there could be retaliation. And then, of course, it will impact businesses, right? So who depends on these imports? These are businesses in the country, big businesses, like, let's say, even someone like Elon Musk. He imports a lot of stuff from China. He's now the head of DOJ department in Trump's administration. But I know he wasn't even happy because there was an article about him actually feeling that this is not fair. So in that case, you see, it will impact people. It will impact people negatively. And these are businesses that run the economy. And what happens to the economy when everything is falling? The stocks will fall. Stocks are businesses, right? And this is directly related. If your economy is having a trade war with another economy that actually brings a lot of goods and services into your country, then what happens? There's always going to be a stock market impact. So that's just a direct economic correlation. The S&P 500 has gone crazy. We've lost almost, I think, 20% from the peak where we were last time. We're still going down. We don't know what's going to happen. The other day when Trump did pause the tariffs for a few days, we bounced back up, but obviously that was so precarious. I was like, that's going to go back down, obviously. If you're investing in the US stocks, you know where things stand right now, because obviously there's a trade war between the US and the rest of the world. What's happening in the stock market? These are businesses domiciled in the US. And so they are impacted in so many ways. Most of these businesses import the things they need. They don't have 100% of the things they need in the country, so they import them. When these tariffs are imposed, they impact the market. But not just that. Markets are emotional, right? It's us, it's people, it's general investors who are in the market. What do they feel when Trump comes fighting with every country? They feel fearful, right? And what do? They go on a sell-off. And what happens when you go on a sell-off? More sell-off and more sell-off. People are running from the market because they're like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Trump is doing all this crazy stuff, right? And we don't know what China will do. We don't know what will happen to the industries. We don't know what will happen to the companies that are relying on imports. And people are fearful. Investors are emotional. The markets are sentimental, so they drop, and everyone sells, and everyone sells. It's just a cycle of all this emotional reaction. But now let's talk about the stock market. The stock market has continuously given us good returns for a long time, right? But one thing you might not know, if you have started investing recently, is that we have had these occasions. They are rare, but they happen. The market falls. The stock market has crashed. The market falls. It rebounds again. What do you need to do right now? You need to continue investing. Millionaires and riches are made in times like these when things are uncertain, people are fearful, people are running away. There is what we call a bloodbath in the market. This is when riches are made. Why? Because everything is bought at a bargain. During the house prices crash, people bought houses at very cheap prices. They made money, obviously, because the prices came back up. During the stock market crashes that I'm going to mention here, people made money. Why? Because everything they were buying so expensively became so cheap. Every stock that was trading at, let's say, $100 each or $1,000 came back almost half or even less than half, depending on the drop. And people made lots of money because they could now afford those stocks. So in that case, this is the time to get rich. That's what you need to do. You need to buy more. You need to buy more stocks right now if you haven't started yet. But again, if you're in the market, don't lock in your price. Don't lock in your losses. You only lock in those losses if you sell. Don't look at your portfolio. It's not the time. Unless you're buying, no need to look at it. If you have a long-term horizon, long-term plan into the stock market, this is the time to stick to that plan. And just to give you a very clear view, there has been crashes for a very long time. They have happened not once, not twice, not thrice. They have happened so many times for different reasons. And the market has always rebounded. The market is never a straight line. It goes in cycles, and this is just one of those cycles we're going through right now. In 1907, the market dropped by 50%. 50%, guys. If you had 100,000 pounds, you have 50,000 pounds. That's bad. That's a big loss. Do you know how long it would take you to save 50,000 pounds? Now, the years that followed, the market gained 193%. 193%. The years that followed. So if you didn't lock in your losses, you still made money. In 1929, the market fell 83%. 83%. In the years that followed, the market gained 815%. In 1945, the market fell 22% during the war. In the years that followed, the market gained 935% return. In 1974, the market fell 42%. And in the years that followed, the market gained 845%. In 1987, the big crash, the market fell 22%. And that happened in just one day. In the years that followed, the market gained 816%. We lost 22% in a day, it gained 816%. In 2001, right, you all know the 2001 crash, the market dropped 45%, it gained 100% in the following years. And that went again until 2008, the big crash, and where we lost 50% of the market value, and later after that we gained 500%. And that went on until COVID in 2020, when the market lost again a big one. And you all know what happened in 2020. So you are all alive, I believe. You know what happened. You saw how the market lost. We went into a correction zone. We lost more than 20%, 30%, but we rebounded back. We have been in a winning zone for a very long time right now. And again, this is just one of those dips that we are facing right now. How far is it going to go? We don't know. What we know is one thing: the markets will come back. The markets are resilient enough. They go through cycles and they will come back. All you need to do, if you've been doing dollar cost averaging, continue buying. If you had some money parked somewhere because you're waiting for an opportunity, then buy. So it is difficult to time these things and know exactly when it's going to happen. But if you had some money somewhere and you think this is the best time for you to buy, then you're going to get a bargain. So go for it. So again, like I said, you need to do nothing. If you have a plan, if you've been doing everything well, if you've been dollar cost averaging, continue doing exactly that. And if you're not willing to buy right now and you have some stocks in the market, let them be. Focus on some other investments. This is also the time to think about diversification if you want to. If you feel that this is a very precarious position for you, this is the time to think about real estate. This is the time to think about other things that are a bit more stable. Generally, debt securities, right? Things that you could give you a bit more peace, right? So it's a time to actually just maybe rebalance your portfolio a little bit in terms of like, what are some of the other things I can invest in? It's also the time to think of, you know what? The stock market will always come back. it will come back. Until next time, I'm out.